hidden in forgotten garages across the globe, lie the most insane off-road machines ever built. From secret German prototypes that never saw production to jaw-dropping American beasts buried in history, in today's episode, we've uncovered the most legendary vehicles that will rewrite everything you thought you knew about vintage off-roading. The 1990 Land Rover Santana II 500DL. If the Defender had a tough Spanish cousin who skipped the Polish and went straight for the grit, it'd be the 1990 Land Rover Santana II 500DL. Built under license by Santana Motors, this wasn't a luxury ride. It was built to survive. Under the hood sat a no-nonsense 2.5-liter 12J diesel engine, pumping out just over 60 horsepower and 110 pound-feet of torque. It paired that diesel grunt with a 5-speed manual and a selectable 4WD system. Solid axles, leaf springs, and zero regard for comfort. It wasn't trying to impress. Forget frills. The Santana 2500 DL was made to haul, climb, and survive. And it did, again and again. The Trabant 601 Kübel was Cold War charisma on 4 wheels. Stripped of doors, decked in utilitarian drab, and capped with a canvas roof, this East German quirky rig was built for military patrols, border guards, and forest rangers who didn't mind getting a little wind in their uniforms. Its shell was made of Duraplast, that is fibers and resin, molded into a body so light it practically floated over potholes. Under the hood, a 594 cubic centimeter 2-stroke twin-cylinder buzzed out 26 horsepower. Not much, but just enough to scoot across muddy paths and snowy outposts with a certain wheezy determination. There was no luxury here, but that was the point. This was a functional field vehicle made in a land of constraints, where form always followed function. Today, the Kübel's minimalist charm and cartoonish profile turn heads at vintage rallies. It's rugged, it's rare, and somehow it made Spartan stylish. The year had a lot to offer, and the 1990 LJ70 hit that sweet spot between maneuverability and serious trail credibility. Toyota carved this one for folks who needed real 4WD chops in a smaller, no-nonsense package. Beneath its boxy slab-sided frame sat a 2.4-liter 2LT turbo diesel engine. You got around 90 horsepower and 240 Nim of torque. But the magic was in how it delivered. Smooth, low-end grunt that made steep climbs feel casual. The short wheelbase gave it tight turning and great breakover, while solid axles, a manual transfer case, and full-time 4-wheel drive gave it legit crawling muscle. Suspension? Coil springs up front, leafs in the rear. Stiff but dependable. This machine was built to work, get dirty, and always make it out the other side. The IFA W50 4x4 was a truck so East German, it probably came with a complimentary copy of Das Kapital and a stern warning against capitalist roaders. Built from 1965 to 1990, this utilitarian vehicle was designed to survive the winter and even the apocalypse. Under the hood, it sported a 6.56-liter 4-cylinder diesel engine, churning out a modest 125 horsepower. To be fair, it wasn't exactly built for drag races. It was built to haul 5.3 tons of whatever the state deemed necessary. Off-road, the W50 was surprisingly adept. Its 4x4 configuration, combined with a lockable differential and robust suspension, allowed it to tackle rough terrains with relative ease. It even managed to climb the spectator stands at Budapest's Népstadion during a test. Today, the W50 is a cult classic among vintage truck enthusiasts and those who appreciate vehicles that double as Cold War memorabilia. The Mitsubishi Pajero was already a terror, but the turbo intercooler upped the game. Its 2.5-liter turbo diesel engine was upgraded by fitting an intercooler for better cooling and power delivery, pushing around 94 horsepower and a whole lot of low-end torque. It wasn't quick, but it was relentless. Mitsubishi offered the option of a short wheelbase or long wheelbase body, plus a selectable 4-wheel drive, and included a limited slip differential for even better traction in the rough. With coil springs up front, leaf springs out back, and body-on-frame construction, it could soak up rough trails and still feel tight on tarmac. The wide fender flares, skid plates, and squared-off stance made it look ready for battle. And it was. The turbo intercooler Pajero was for drivers who cared more about mountain passes than mall parking lots. At first glance, the Volkswagen Iltis looks like something left behind by a retreating army. Boxy, bare bones, and just a bit confused about whether it's a car or a crate on wheels. But underneath that lack of aesthetics is a brilliant piece of mechanical thinking. Designed in the late 70s for the West German military, the Iltis was handed off to Volkswagen after Audi did the early legwork. Ironically, it's that early Audi tinkering that gave birth to a clever all-wheel drive system, one that would eventually evolve into Audi's now famous Quattro. The Iltis came with a 1.7-liter four-cylinder engine, full-time 4WD with locking differentials, and a gearbox that included a crawler gear for climbing things cars had no business climbing. It wasn't fast, but it didn't fail to get the work done. To prove this, in 1980, this unassuming chunk of steel entered the Paris-Dakar Rally and casually took first place, beating flashier, faster, more expensive machines. The 1987 GMC Sierra walked the line between brute and class act. The choice of engines were solid V8s, most famously the 5.7-liter 350, backed by a 4-speed automatic that handled work and play with equal grit. Whether 2WD or 4WD, this truck sat on leaf springs, stopped with power disc brakes, and wasn't shy about taking a beating. But it also had a bit of swagger. Brushed aluminum interior trim, leather upholstery, two-tone paint, and enough chrome to catch a cowboy's eye. Toss in power windows, AC, cruise control, and dual fuel tanks, and you had a working man's Cadillac. Wherever you see it today, remember, it is a living, rolling time capsule of 80s muscle and blue-collar pride. You might have never imagined that there was once a Porsche that could swim, but it did exist. Meet the 1955 Type 597 Jagdwagen, the famous hunting car. Built when West Germany needed a light military vehicle, Porsche threw its name into the helmet. The result? A 4WD off-roader with a rear-mounted 1.5-liter flat-4 engine and enough ground clearance to scale a goat path blindfolded. The Jagdwagen wasn't just good at climbing, it could float. Early prototypes came with actual propellers and paddles. Yes, paddles. This thing was a part-time boat. Structurally, it rode on a stiff steel monocoque and used a fully independent torsion bar suspension. That gave it surprising agility off-road, especially for something that looked like a Beetle crossed with a metal lunchbox. Only 71 were built, likely because amphibious sportsmen are a niche market. Today, survivors are prized as rare oddities. Half war machine, half gentleman's toy. The 1986 Toyota 4Runner wasn't trying to be stylish, it was trying to be useful. But somehow, it was both. 1986 was the last year Toyota offered the 4Runner with a solid front axle, making it a favorite among off-road purists who like their rigs raw and mechanical. A trusty 2.4-liter 22 RE inline-4 engine with 105 horsepower, modest sure, but practically indestructible. It came with a 5-speed manual or a 4-speed auto and selectable 4-wheel drive, paired with rugged leaf spring suspension in the back and that gloriously simple solid axle up front. The rear fiberglass canopy could be removed, instantly transforming it into a mini open-air trail beast. It was a truck first, SUV second, and for many off-roaders, that's exactly what made it perfect. Step into the world of pre-war luxury and military muscle with the Mercedes-Benz G4 W31, produced between 1934 and 1939. This grand beast was no ordinary SUV. It was a 3-axle 6-wheel drive giant, built to impress and dominate. Under the hood, a robust 5.0 to 5.4-liter inline 6 engine pumped out around 100 horsepower, enough to haul dignitaries and military brass through rough terrain and state parades. The G4's off-road chops were impressive for its time. Its 3-driven axles and impressive ground clearance let it conquer dirt roads, hills, and mud with surprising ease. Mostly used by high-ranking officials in Nazi Germany, it was as much a symbol of power as a practical military vehicle. With only about 57 units ever made, each was hand-built and richly appointed inside. Leather seats, wood trim, and all the pomp you'd expect. Today, the G4 remains a rare icon of German engineering and history. Don't let the slab-sided looks fool you. The 1989 Nissan Terrano wasn't just a dressed-up pickup. Underneath that humble shell lurked a choice between a torquey 2.7-liter diesel or a 3.0-liter 5.6 engine borrowed from Nissan's luxury sedans and sports cars, good for 140 to 155 horsepower. Though hardly fast, it had grunt and stamina, enough to survive Paris-Dakar in stock form. Built on the indestructible D21 hardbody frame, it blended in while delivering quality that lasted decades. While the US got the four-door Pathfinder later, Japan's Terrano was always a smooth, quiet brute. These days, finding one is rare, but if you do, you've found one of the last truly dual-natured SUVs. City lounge inside, trail beast beneath. Most folks know the Volkswagen Type 181, the utilitarian thing that was a favorite for West Germany's army and later the public. But Porsche's Type 181, that's a rare twist in the off-road saga. Back in the 70s, Porsche and VW were tightly linked. They even shared dealerships. Porsche, obsessed with cracking the American market, took the VW thing, gave it a Porsche makeover, and slapped on a 914 engine and 5-speed gearbox. The result was a posh, more capable off-roader with better suspension and a nicer gauge cluster. However, when Porsche pitched this Americanized thing to US dealers, the reception did not go as expected. Porsche built only 5 of these upgraded Type 181s before pulling the plug. One lucky example made it to the US thanks to a Nevada dealer, and today it's the only known survivor of the original batch. Basically a unicorn for Porsche and off-road fans. In 1988, Toyota snuck a tech upgrade into the 60 series lineup with the FJ62. Think of it as the FJ60's smarter, slightly softer going cousin. Under that boxy bonnet sat a 4.0-liter 3F VSI inline 6 with electronic fuel injection, bumping output to about 155 horsepower and 220 pound-feet of torque. No carburetor headaches here. Mated to one's choice of a 4-speed ECT automatic or a 5-speed manual, power flowed through a part-time 4-wheel drive system with selectable high-low ranges and a sturdy transfer case. Toyota swapped round headlights for squares, added power steering, power windows, and optional cruise control, so one could tackle backcountry fire roads in comfort. With full-time live axles front and rear, it was an off-road king then, and still is today. The VW Golf family was already more ubiquitous than a coffee shop chain, but in the late 1980s they decided to go country. Unsurprisingly, the new car was called the Golf Country, a limited-run, hand-built, off-road twist on the MK2 Synchro. Under the hood sat the familiar 1.8-liter inline-4 making 89 horsepower, paired with a 5-speed manual whose shorter gearing managed the extra 350 pounds. Finished by Steyr Daimler Puch in Austria, each one received a tubular subframe and a 4.7-inch lift. Ground clearance jumped to over 7 inches, protected by skid plates and sleeves around the CV joints. On dirt roads and rocky tracks, the Synchro's viscous coupling AWD sent torque rearward as needed, switching seamlessly from front-drive thrift to full-time 4-wheel tenacity and off-road. It performed with the poise of a seasoned trail runner. Today, it remains one of the best VW collectibles. The 325iX quietly sabotaged over-eager Broncos in Colorado and terrified suburban commuters who thought all 3 series were pavement princes. Launched in 1986, this mountain-goading mule wore chunky fender flares and a higher ride height like trail badges. No fancy lift kits needed. Under that classic Hofmeister kink sat a 2.5-liter M20 inline 6, churning out 168 horsepower and 164 pound-feet through a 5-speed manual or 4-speed automatic transmission. Power split 37 to 63 front to rear ensured grip, whether you were carving switchbacks or stomping snowy driveways. Inside, it played dress-up with heated seats and plush trim while hiding its go-anywhere chops. The 325th iX pulled through some years, but by 1991 it was no longer in production. Today, it is still regarded as one of the best classic off-road rigs. The Porsche 356 was not just any classic car, it was where Porsche's story began. Introduced in 1948 by Ferry Porsche in Austria, the 356 merged Volkswagen roots with racing ambition. Its rear-mounted air-cooled four-cylinder, initially 1.1 liters with 40 horsepower, lived in a lightweight aluminum body that could have doubled as a paperweight, but performed excellently off-road. By 1950, steel bodies replaced aluminum shells. Smooth curves and a split windscreen gave way to a single pane in 1952, making every 356 look like it was blowing a kiss at the wind. Over its run to 1965, it evolved through Pre-A, 356A, 356B, and 356C, adding curved glass, power, disc brakes, and a penchant for speed. The Speedster variant kept things minimal, a low windshield, and a grin. On track, 356 won races from Le Mans to Mille Miglia, cementing Porsche's sporty DNA. Collectors now pay fortunes. Nothing says timeless like a 356 idling in the driveway. Built for winter roads and backcountry tracks, the Toyota Blizzard was Japan's no-nonsense 4x4. Under its three-door soft-top shell sat a turbocharged 2.45-liter diesel, producing 85 horsepower at 4,000 RPM and 188 Nm of torque at 2,400 RPM. A 5-speed manual gearbox fed power to a part-time 4-wheel drive system with a 2-speed transfer case, so you could switch from highway to mud pit without losing a beat. At 3,655 millimeters long and 1,580 millimeters wide, it was compact enough for narrow trails but roomy enough for 5. Top speed hovered around 135 kilometers per hour, but its real talent was creeping over ice and squeezing through ruts. Simple, sturdy, and utterly dependable, it was the Toyota's winter warrior that never backed down from a rough day's drive. The VW G60 Classic was the one that behaved like it swallowed a scroll-type supercharger for breakfast. It was a humble MK2 shell, hiding a 1.8 G-liter supercharged flat 4 that cranked out 160 horsepower and around 210 Nm of torque. VW introduced it in August 1988 as a limited edition nod to forced induction fans. A 5-speed manual gearbox channeled power mainly to the front wheels, though a synchro version offered full-time AWD. The chassis remains largely stock, McPherson struts up front, semi-trailing arms at the rear, and 4-wheel discs. Visually, it was low-key. Subtle G60 badging on the grille, standard steel wheels wrapped in grippy rubber, and stock bumpers that belie its hidden prowess. But the cabin was all MK2 Golf. Straightforward plastics, comfy cloth seats, and a steering wheel. That's just the right size to remind you this is still a driver's car. Only 13,000 were produced, so if you find one, you hold a rare piece. Small, square, and straight to the point. That's the Suzuki SJ413. Designed to be cheap, light, and wildly capable, it was never meant to compete with full-size 4x4s. Under the hood, it ran a 1.3-liter 4-cylinder, paired with a 5-speed manual, sending around 63 horsepower to a part-time 4WD system. Not fast, not fancy, just functional. The SJ413 used a ladder frame, solid axles, and leaf springs all around. Tough enough to take a beating, simple enough to fix with hand tools. With 8 inches of ground clearance and a curb weight under 1,900 pounds, it floated over mud and zipped up rocky trails that would stall heavier rigs. It wasn't luxurious, but that was the point. It was light, narrow, and easy to maneuver. Now here's a machine that rewrote the rules before the world knew there were any. Meet the Tempo G1200. Built in pre-war Germany, this off-road renegade came with not one but 2 engines, each a 2-cylinder, 2-stroke ILO unit sitting on opposite ends of the frame. With a combined 38 horsepower and the ability to run front, rear, or both engines on demand, the G1200 could claw its way through mud, snow, or battlefield ruins without breaking a sweat. Its tubular backbone frame, independent suspension, and 4-wheel steering gave it agility ahead of its time. Add a pendulum axle and all-wheel drive, and you had a vehicle that could dance through chaos. Only about 1,300 were ever made, mostly exported to neutral countries. It didn't win the Wehrmacht's heart, but it sure won a spot in history as one of the most eccentric and capable German 4x4s ever built. The 1982 to 1990 Mitsubishi Montero first generation, sold internationally as the Pajero, this boxy brute came to the US badged as the Montero, with all the trail chops and none of the fluff. It launched with a 2.6-liter four-cylinder gas engine and later welcomed a V6, but the real magic wasn't under the hood, it was underneath. A proper 4WD system, body-on-frame toughness, and an available locking rear differential made it a favorite for off-roaders before off-roading got trendy. Suspension, torsion bars up front, coils or leafs in the rear depending on configuration. Either way, it could flex where it mattered. Short wheelbase 2-door or long wheelbase 4-door, you had choices. The first-gen Montero wasn't trying to be cute. It was built for getting lost and loving every minute of it. The 1981 Mercedes-Benz G-Class W460 was the SUV equivalent of a tank in a tuxedo. Under the hood, you had choices ranging from the modest 240 GD diesel with a whopping 71 horsepower to the slightly more enthusiastic 280 GE petrol variant, pushing out 148 horsepower, which wasn't for speed but efficiency. Fuel economy? Let's just say it preferred a drink, averaging around 16.5 liters per 100 kilometers. In 1981, Mercedes decided to spoil its drivers with luxuries such as automatic transmissions, air conditioning, and power windows. Because who doesn't want to feel a breeze while crawling up a mountain? Despite its utilitarian roots, the G-Class found fans in high places. Literally. The Pope had one, dubbed the Pope-mobile, complete with a clear dome for waving at the masses. Today, the W460 is a classic, reminding us that sometimes function over form isn't such a bad thing. The Suzuki SJ410 was that scrappy little sidekick you didn't see coming but couldn't live without. Made from 1982 to 1988, this tiny 4x4 packed a punch with its 1.0-liter three-cylinder engine. Not a powerhouse, but perfectly nimble for tight trails and city-tight spots. Punched well above its weight off-road, thanks to solid axles and a simple, rugged design. It's the perfect choice if you want something that's easy to tinker with, cheap to run, and surprisingly capable in rough terrain. Not the fastest, not the biggest, but reliable and downright fun. Suzuki's a little workhorse that's still turning heads decades later. The Volkswagen Type 2 was introduced in 1950. This rolling box of charm was VW's post-war masterpiece. Practical, lovable, and impossible to ignore. The split-window bus especially, pure magic. With its iconic round headlights, upright windshield, and sunny disposition, it looked like it was always smiling, even when covered in dust. And yes, while it wasn't born to be a rock crawler, but off-road conversions gave it surprising grit. Pop one on lifted suspension, throw on chunky tires, and suddenly it's tackling trails like a happy-go-lucky mountain goat. That rear-engine layout? Great for traction on loose terrain. But the real beauty was its versatility. Camper, cargo van, or weekend trailblazer, it did it all with vintage flair. Whether parked by a beach or climbing a fire road, the Type 2 always made it look like a joyride. It's not just a vehicle, it's a vibe. The first-generation Isuzu Trooper kicked off in the 80s as a rugged, straightforward SUV made for real-world adventures. Under the hood, it offered a modest 2.0-liter petrol or diesel engine. Not a speed demon, but plenty capable when the road turns rough. Off-road muscle. The suspension setup mixed coil springs in front with leaf springs at the back, striking a good balance between comfort and toughness. Inside, it kept things simple and practical. Roomy enough for crew and cargo, but without the fluff. The Trooper's charm lied in its no-frills, get-it-done attitude, making it a favorite among those who want reliability over flash. A classic rig ready for trails or the daily grind. Once upon a time, the Shah of Iran asked Mercedes for a proper off-roader, so they teamed up with Steyr Daimler Puch and gave birth to the W460. By 1986, the 300 GD carried the torch as a descendant. It had a 3.0-liter inline-5 OM617 diesel engine, rated at a modest 88 horsepower and 127 pound-feet, yet famed for cruising past 620,000 miles without a hiccup. In a world chasing horsepower, this G-Wagon was more endurance athlete than sprinter. Sideways, it was all boxy silhouette, slab-sided doors, and flat glass everywhere. Underneath, a ladder frame, rigid axles, and that legendary torsion beam front suspension let it tackle Sahara dunes or Arctic ice rinks with equal aplomb. Ground clearance? A lofty 7 inches, enough to clear most tree stumps or small livestock. The interior was curiously civilized. Cushioned seats, purposeful dash layout, and enough headroom to wear a helmet. This intentional approach to luxury has made it a favorite in the world of luxury cars today. France needed a Jeep successor by the 1970s, but nobody wanted to build one until Peugeot stepped in with a clever workaround, licensed the rock-solid Mercedes G-Class. The result was the Peugeot P4, a lightweight, air-droppable 4x4 that served as the French Army's nimble utility backbone. Designed to haul 4 troops plus gear or a radio station, it ditched excess bulk in favor of a folding windshield, canvas top, and plastic doors. Early versions packed a Peugeot 504 petrol engine. Later ones, especially from Panhard, used a diesel mill. Speed? Up to 73 miles per hour. Range? 800 kilometers on dual fuel tanks. From 1982 to 1992, over 13,000 P4s rolled out, proving that French practicality, German engineering, and a little compromise could build one very capable battlefield chameleon. Magirus-Deutz trucks weren't just heavy haulers, they were armored workhorses with an attitude. Born from a company that traced its roots to 1866, Ulm fire engine factories, Magirus-Deutz perfected air-cooled diesels and rugged drivetrains. By the 1950s, models like the Merkur and Jupiter 6x6 were prized by militaries and industries for their uncanny ability to devour mud, sand, and rocky trails without complaint. Under that hood sat air-cooled V8s or straight-six diesels that refused to overheat, even under the Sahara sun or Arctic freeze. Their 4x4 and 6x6 layouts, coupled with lockable differentials, meant traction was always on call. Cab interiors were Spartan, think steel benches and a dashboard that doubled as a lunch table, because luxury was for sedans, not these battlefield behemoths. By the late 60s, Magirus-Deutz merged with Fiat's truck division, but left a legacy of indestructible off-road icons. Today, vintage examples still show up through mud bogs and military reenactments. The 160 series Patrol, known as the MIQ or MK, depending on updates, is where Nissan really doubled down on tough. Under the hood, you had options. A 2.8-liter L28 petrol inline 6, or a bulletproof 3.03-liter SD33 diesel. Later, a turbocharged version of that diesel added a bit more punch where it counted. Power ranged from 95 to 110 horsepower, but torque was the name of the game. Solid axles, leaf springs, and a part-time 4-watt D system meant it was built to bash trails, ford creeks, and shrug off washboard tracks. The 4-speed and later 5-speed manual gearbox paired beautifully with its low-range transfer case. The 160 Patrol was that no-frills, go-anywhere rig you couldn't kill if you tried. It didn't try to be loud, flashy, or intimidating, but the Borgward B2000AO didn't need to. In post-war Germany, this utility truck came wrapped in steel simplicity, with a face like a frown and the soul of a mountain goat. The 2.4-liter inline 6 was never in a rush, pushing out just 82 horsepower, but off the road, that didn't matter. Ground clearance hit 260 millimeters, and it could wade through 750 millimeters of water without drama. Leaf springs, a rigid chassis, and selectable 4WD gave it sure-footed traction through mud, snow, and gravel, earning quiet respect from the Bundeswehr. It hauled troops, ammo, comms gear, whatever fit under its canvas roof. No synchro on the gearbox meant every gear change was deliberate, but reliability nearly unmatched. And unlike many rivals, it had an unshakable calmness in chaos. Today, it's not just remembered, it's admired, precisely because it never tried to impress. It just worked. Born from Nissan's quest to dethrone the Land Rover and Jeep in the 1960s, the 1977 Patrol LJ60 was a bruiser built for real off-road conquest. Under its bonnet sat an iron block 3.956-liter P inline 6, pumping out 128 horsepower and 217 pound-feet of torque, mated to a rugged 3-speed and later 4-speed manual and 2-speed transfer case for true part-time 4-wheel drive. With a 2.2-meter wheelbase, live axles front and rear on leaf springs and drum brakes, it brushed aside ruts and rocks. It was initially launched in 1960, but by 1977 it had proven its mettle, famously conquering the Simpson Desert, and earned a cult following from Australia to the Middle East. Whatever type you found, from SWB soft tops to LWB wagons and pickups, It delivered on all fronts. Introduced in 1953 as the all-wheel drive sibling of the L28, the Hanomag AL28 carried a modest 1.5-ton payload, yet strutted like it could swallow 7. Under that alligator hood lived a 2.8-liter pre-chamber diesel thrumming out about 70 horsepower. Not exactly rocket fuel numbers, but in a 4x4 truck, grunt matters more than gallop. The AL28 found itself steering through mud, snow, or dusty West German training grounds. Selectable front axle engagement meant you could switch from city to wilderness really fast. Top speed hovered around 72 kilometers per hour, which was plenty for outrunning boredom, if not rival trucks. Inside was sparse. Vinyl seats, a Spartan dash, because comfort took a backseat to dependability. Leaf springs and a rigid frame scoffed at rough terrain, and a 750mm fording depth let it wade through puddles that made lesser trucks hesitate. In short, the AL28 didn't flaunt, it functioned. The Suzuki LJ80 rolled onto the scene in 1977, like the LJ50's slightly taller, tougher sibling. Same attitude, just more muscle. It finally got a 4-stroke engine, a 797 cubic centimeters, inline-4 that made a roaring 41 horsepower, which on paper sounds cute. But the LJ80 wasn't here to win drag races. It was here to go absolutely anywhere. It kept the solid axles, the leaf springs, and the part-time 4WD with a low range. What changed was the confidence. Wider track, stronger frame, and just enough refinement to make it slightly more civilized, if you ignored the wind noise and bone-rattling ride. It was still featherlight, still absurdly capable off-road, and still looked like a toy truck that survived boot camp. The fun-sized package no one saw coming, but everyone remembered. The DKW Munga was Germany's answer to the question, what if a Jeep had a 2-stroke heart and a fondness for mud? Built by Auto Union from 1956 to 1968, this boxy brute was powered by a 900 cubic centimeters 3-cylinder 2-stroke engine, delivering a modest 40 horsepower. It featured permanent 4WD, a 4-speed manual transmission, and a top speed of around 98 kilometers per hour downhill with a tailwind. Despite its humble power plant, the Munga was a favorite among NATO forces, the German border police, and farmers who needed a vehicle that could plow through fields and forests without complaint. Its off-road prowess was legendary, thanks to a lightweight design of around 1,653 pounds and a suspension setup that cruised over potholes. It even found a second life in Brazil as the DKW Munga. The Munga's simplicity was its charm, no fuss, just a rugged companion that got the job done. The 1976 Toyota Stout 5R didn't mess around with flash. It came ready to haul, tow, and tackle rough jobs without a complaint. Designed for utility first, this mid-size pickup was fitted with a 2.0-liter 5R inline-4 engine that made around 95 horsepower, modest on paper, but built like a tank. Torque kicked in early, perfect for low-speed pull and load-bearing duties. A 4-speed manual transmission kept things simple, while solid axles front and rear with leaf springs meant you could load it up to the rails without stressing the frame. Ground clearance hovered around 195 millimeters, just enough for rural roads or job site detours. Whether as a single or double cab, the Stout 5R did one thing well, work hard. And it rarely broke a sweat. The Volkswagen Type 181 was affectionately dubbed the Thing in the US because boxy German convertible didn't quite roll off the tongue. It started life as a military utility vehicle but soon became a civilian off-road favorite, charming folks from Mexico to Malibu. With its 1.6-liter air-cooled flat-4 engine churning out a whopping 46 horsepower, it wasn't exactly a speed demon, but it had character in spades. Off-road, the Thing held its own. Its lightweight design and simple mechanics made it surprisingly adept at navigating rough terrains, especially in lighter off-road conditions. The military versions even featured reduction boxes for better ground clearance. The Thing's design was delightfully utilitarian. Removable doors, a fold-flat windshield, and a convertible top that invited the elements in. It was as if Volkswagen challenged the notion of what a car should be, and in doing so, created something truly unique and classic. With its square-shouldered stance and removable hardtop, the Jimmy delivered old-school 4x4 swagger years before SUVs were fashionable. Built on the same platform as the Chevy Blazer, it offered serious trail chops, especially when optioned with four-wheel drive, the 400 cubic inch diesel V8, and a manual transmission. Sure, it only pushed 175 horsepower, but with up to 290 pound-feet of torque and a curb weight under 4,500 pounds, it could haul over dunes and crawl through mud with quiet confidence. Underneath, its stout suspension and body-on-frame construction gave it rock-ready toughness. The front disc brakes and generous ground clearance made rough terrain feel manageable. Even on stock tires, if you own one, you can still load it up with modern upgrades. Meet the VW Trooper LT 4x4, a van that ditched cargo duty and went full-on dirt warrior. Born from the humble Volkswagen LT, this boxy brute was reimagined for the kind of adventures that laugh at paved roads. With full-time four-wheel drive, chunky tires, and a tall, no-nonsense stance, the Trooper LT doesn't just drive off-road, it dominates it. Builders often yank out the original six-cylinder gas engines and slap in turbocharged 2.5-liter diesel mills like the D5252T, giving it that much-needed grunt to climb, crawl, and roar through brutal terrain. You'll spot these in wild off-road events across Europe, pulling stunts that make SUVs look shy. Think water crossings, deep mud, and brutal hill climbs, all in a van. But what really makes the Trooper LT shine is its homemade character. It's part overlander, part battle wagon, and fully unstoppable. Not fancy, not fragile, just damn cool. The Dodge Ram Charger was Chrysler's late entry into the 70s open-air SUV party, arriving after icons like the Chevy Blazer and Ford Bronco had set the tone. Built by chopping 9 inches off a Dodge pickup's wheelbase and removing the roof, it offered rugged, no-nonsense style with a removable steel or vinyl top. Under the hood, engine options ranged from a modest 3.7-liter Fighting 6 to a burly 7.2-liter Fied 8, with the legendary 440 cubic inch V8 packing, serious torque of up to 350 pound-feet. Fuel economy was poor by today's standards. Expect around 8 to 11.5 miles per gallon. The World War II Schwimmwagen. Type 166 went so far off the road that it drove on water. Designed by Porsche in 1942 and built by VW, this amphibious oddball could ditch mud for lake crossings. Its 1.1-liter flat-4 engine produced 25 horsepower, pushing it to 80 kilometers per hour on land and 10 kilometers per hour afloat. Engage four-wheel drive in first gear or reverse. The rest is two-wheel confession. The pressed steel hull was so watertight that steering on water meant turning the front wheels like rudders. A retractable propeller dropped at the rear, driven directly by the engine. This contraption served on muddy eastern front trails where standard vehicles sank without ceremony. Inside, you sat amid benches and bare metal, wearing waterproof gear or mud-stained boots. No creature comforts here. Between 1942 and 1944, over 15,000 were built, making it history's top-selling amphibious car. And today, surviving Schwimmwagens are regarded as museum treasures. The Daihatsu Taft F20 was pretty much a mini-tank. It didn't care about your need for speed. It was built for the kind of terrain that made bigger trucks weep. Under its square, no-nonsense body sat a 1.6-liter Toyota 12R engine, pushing a modest 66 horsepower, but torque and traction were the real stars. With part-time four-wheel drive, a low-range transfer case, and live axles front and rear, the F20 didn't flinch at rocks, mud, or steep climbs. And thanks to its tight wheelbase and lightweight frame, it slipped through tight forest trails like a hiking goat with headlights. The Suzuki LJ50 showed up to crawl, climb, and out-stubborn nature. Born in 1974 with a 539 cubic centimeters two-stroke triple under its tiny hood, this lightweight legend made just 26 horsepower, but paired it with part-time four-wheel drive, a low-range transfer case, and solid axles front and rear. Small didn't mean soft. With leaf springs and barely over 1,500 pounds to haul, the LJ50 could squeeze through trails others couldn't even find. The 1973 Jeep J2000 was the kind of truck that looked like it ate Broncos for breakfast and still had room for a side of dirt trail. A MC made it a full-size four-wheel drive brute with muscle, charm, and a few trim-level alter egos. From the Pioneer if you liked your off-roading with a splash of shag carpet, to the Honcho for loud decals and a roll bar, plus the rare Golden Eagle if subtlety just didn't apply. In 1973, the Jeepster series ditched its flower child past and fully embraced muscle and grit, hence the Commando. A MC had taken over, beefed it up, and handed it a 304 Ci V8 with 150 net horsepower. Enough grunt to make this 4x4 station wagon more than just a grocery getter with a lift. With a 104-inch wheelbase, a tougher chassis, stronger axles, and real off-road cred, it was rugged where it counted and refined where it needed to be. When the world demanded grit over glamour, the Land Rover stepped in and built the Series 3 from 1971 to 1985 as the final chapter of the original series line. It came with a modest 2.25-liter petrol or diesel engine pushing out around 70 to 75 horsepower. But torque was where it shined. Solid axles, leaf springs, a selectable 4WD system, and a 2-speed transfer case made it a mountain goat in boxy form. The Range Rover Classic didn't show up to blend in. It invented a category. When it launched in 1970, it wasn't just Land Rover slapping a roof on a farm truck. This was a mission to combine off-road grit with on-road grace, and they nailed it. Beneath its boxy charm was a 3.5-liter aluminum V8 paired to full-time 4WD and a locking center differential. It had long travel coil springs, permanent four-wheel drive, and the kind of articulation that made trail obstacles feel like speed bumps. Inside? At first it was bare bones, hosed down after the hunt. But over time, leather, wood, and refinement crept in without killing the rugged soul. Before soccer moms claimed the SUV, the International Harvester Travelall was out dragging trailers and conquering dirt roads. This bruiser only cared about muscle. Early models ran an inline-six with 131 horsepower, but things got serious in the late 60s with V8s up to 392 cubic inches and torsion bar front suspension for better road manners. It could haul 8 passengers, bales of hay, and still shrug off a rutted trail. By 1973, IH was throwing in AMC's 401 cubic inches V8 just to keep the monster fed. Launched in 1968, the Type 181 was a rugged oddball fusion of beetle guts with military grit. A Kübelwagen throwback wrapped in angular minimalist sheet metal. It was called the Thing in the US and the Trekker in the UK, and it looked like a Lego Jeep and drove like a beach buggy with a soldier swagger. Underneath sat a widened Karmann Gaia floor pan, a flat-4 air-cooled engine, and later Porsche-style axles for better articulation. Everyone was a 4-door cabriolet, often with no roof, no doors, and no frills. Just elemental driving fun. If the Land Cruiser 40 was the mountain goat, the FJ55 was the pack mule. Sturdy, slow, and built to carry weight across unkind terrain. Designed for people who needed Toyota's proven off-road capability plus room for the family or cargo, the FJ55 was essentially a Land Cruiser in long pants. It ran a 3.9-liter inline-six early on, later upgraded to a 4.2-liter, both mated to a 4-speed manual. Power wasn't thrilling, around 125 to 135 horsepower, but torque was the focus, and it had plenty of it down low. The SJ410 was pure, unfiltered ruggedness in a box. Toyota designed this Land Cruiser to handle anything from dusty farms to harsh military duty. Under the hood was the 4.0-liter inline-six. 2H diesel engine, known for bulletproof durability and torque that won't quit. Roughly 105 horsepower, but more importantly, a grunt-heavy 245 Nim of torque. The engine wasn't about speed. It was about relentless low-end power to crawl over rocks, haul heavy loads, and keep going when others quit. The 1963 Land Rover Series 2A was built on the success of the Series 2, but beefed things up just a little. Stronger drivetrain, sturdier axles, and a more refined but still brutally simple 2.25-liter petrol or diesel engine that topped out around 77 horsepower. It had a 4-speed manual gearbox, selectable 4WD, and suspension that could shake fillings loose but never quit on a trail. When Land Rover ruled the muddy roost, Austin dropped the Gypsy in 1958 to shake things up. Born as a civilian cousin to the military champ, it packed a 2.2-liter A-Series 4-cylinder into a stout 90-inch wheelbase, all-steel chassis. It's offered 4-wheel independent Flexiter rubber trailing arm suspension, no leaf springs here, that soaked up corrugated roads like a champ. Drivers could choose rear drive high, neutral PTO, or full-time 4WD low, hauling up to 10 CWT and pulling 3,000 pounds with ease. The Toyota Land Cruiser BJ40 was the classic tough guy of off-roaders, built between 1960 and 1984 to handle anything from rocky trails to muddy swamps without fuss. Powered by a reliable 3.9-liter inline-6 diesel engine, it was not about flashy speed, but steady, relentless power. Its rugged ladder frame and solid axles gave it a suspension setup built for serious terrain. While its simple, straightforward design meant fewer things to break when you were deep in the wild. The Toyota Bandeirante was Brazil's idea of build it once, make it last forever. Produced from 1958 to 1990, it kept the rugged charm of early Land Cruisers but swapped out Toyota engines for Mercedes-Benz diesels like the OM314 and later OM364. These 3.8 to 4.0-liter inline fours didn't chase speed. They delivered pure, low-end torque that thrived in brutal terrain. Paired with 4 or 5-speed manuals, the drivetrain was as basic as it was bomb-proof. In 1951, Alfa Romeo decided they needed a battle-ready buggy, not another refined coupe, so they birthed the Matta, Italian for crawler. Under that lightweight aluminum skin throbbed a 1.9-liter 4-cylinder, pumping out 65 horsepower and 14 kilogram-meter of torque through a 4-speed manual and dual-range transfer case. Its tubular steel frame, double A-arm front suspension, and leaf springs shaft meant rough country felt like a Sunday drive on the Riviera. Floor-mounted panels revealed front and rear differential locks for conquering mud or mountain trails. Before Land Rover stole the glory, the British Army rolled out the Austin Champ in 1948, a pintle-mounted water-forging war rig that laughed at mud and shellfire alike. Under its bonnet sat a 2.8-liter Rolls-Royce B40 inline-4, engine cranking out 80 horsepower through a rare 5-speed all-synchronous gearbox and dual-range transfer case. Thanks to Alec Isagonis's double wishbone, torsion bar suspension on all 4 corners, the Champ gobbled up corrugated desert tracks like cake. With sealed electrics and a chassis built to shrug off 6-foot water crossings, it was a battlefield beast. You know a car's special when it beats Detroit to the post-war punch. The 1947 Studebaker did exactly that, becoming America's first truly new design after World War II. It didn't just roll off the line, it broke the mold. Styled by Raymond Loewy's team with Virgil Exner's influence, it flaunted flowing fenders, a sleek silhouette, and that famous wraparound rear window on the Starlight Coupe, like a spaceship in a sea of shoeboxes. Under the hood, the Champion offered a 169-pound 9 cubic units in an inline-6 with 80 horsepower, while the Commander brought 94 horsepower from a 226.2 cubic units engine. Back in 1943, while the world was tearing itself apart, America rolled up its sleeves and sent in a 2.2-liter, 60-horsepower hero, the Willys MB Jeep. This squat little 4-wheel drive beast wasn't anything but pretty, but it could crawl through mud, help duck gunfire, and get soldiers to wherever they were going. Powered by the L134 Go Devil engine, it zipped to 65 miles per hour when not hauling gear, medics, or generals. With its tool indents, no-nonsense layout, and no tailgate, because tailgates are for picnics, it was minimalism in steel. It is said that the vehicle was nicknamed Jeep, from the letters GP for general purpose. Meet the VW Schwimmwagen. Basically what happens when a Beetle dreams of becoming a boat. Born from the minds behind the Kübelwagen, this amphibious oddity was Porsche's way of handling swampy messes and river crossings. The first version, Type 128, wobbled under pressure, literally. Its frame cracked, so the team chopped 40 centimeters off the chassis, beefed up the hull, and out came the much sturdier Type 166. It had 4 WD in first and reverse, a single propeller for water cruising, and, interestingly, paddles. Think of the Volkswagen Kübelwagen as the Beetle's grittier cousin who skipped art school to join the army. Built from 1939 to 1945, this lightweight trooper rode into World War II with a rear-mounted air-cooled engine and a stubborn refusal to get stuck. Number 4, WD, no problem. It used clever weight distribution, portal axles, and sheer nerve to cross terrain that should have sent it packing. Designed by Ferdinand Porsche himself, the Kübelwagen sat on a Beetle chassis but wore its own boxy skin. Part function, part military chic. Bucket seats kept soldiers from bouncing out, and a flat belly made off-road recovery a breeze. Over 50,000 were built, and they served everywhere from Russian blizzards to desert heat. Simple, rugged, and weirdly charming. These vintage off-road monsters prove that old-school grit never goes out of style. Which beast would you drive straight into adventure? Tell us in the comments.